very special guest. We have my very good friend, not just a very good friend, but a humble guy, a kind guy, and a little bit shy guy, but we're going to break him out of his shyness today. My friend Gaurav, who is the CEO of Verloop. But not just of that company, he has started quite a few companies. I'm sure he has failed at a few, but I know he has sold a few companies too. And I am very excited to have him here with us today to share his story. So Gaurav, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Sure. So let's start all the way from the beginning. Before all the successes, before all the failures, before all the hype and everything else that came along, let's take a step back and go back 20 years, 20 plus years, and understand where you're from and what was your upbringing like.
So I come from a tier 3 town in India where, internet penetration is now reaching well to the stages where we can call things to be a broadband. Thanks to the mobile revolution and internet revolution, now there is internet. Otherwise, it's a really small town, 100,000 odd people. That's small in Indian comparison. So it's a small town and, not much of internet, not much of technology, but a really close-knit community. So that's where I come from. But the good thing was I got exposed to computers really early. Somewhere I think in class 4 or something is when I was first introduced to computers, and I was blown away. I was like, this is the best thing I've seen in my life. And I always happened to be a chubby guy and never enjoyed sports much back in school and all. So later on, I did pick up a lot of biking and swimming. But back then, computer was where I found my time to be best put to. So somewhere around age of 13 is when I started coding, and I started designing websites, and I suddenly discovered the entire web freelancing models. And I was like, this is the best thing I can do. I can make money while sitting at home. So let's start doing freelancing. So back then I started most of the engineering colleges where you do bachelor's of engineering and computer science and all, they have final year projects to do where you have to do let's say you have to design a restaurant handling system or hospital management systems and all, pretty simple ones. But if you're not used to them, they look complicated. So I started selling those projects to the nearby engineering institutes, and that's how I started. So yeah, tier 3 town, just by chance hooked to computers and started enjoying programming, and then that's what I've been doing for all of my life now.
Wow, that's fascinating. So would you do freelance like on one of these websites or within India?
Partly in India, partly in the network, and then a lot on freelancer.com, Elance, these websites. So in fact, through freelancer, I paid my entire education. But then this is India. Education is really cheap, unlike US. So,
So you were an entrepreneur from a very, very young age.
Yeah, you can say so. If freelancing counts, then yeah, I started doing it early, and then going forward, somewhere around third year of my college is when I started a student freelance platform, because I had seen the entire freelancing, how it helped me grow, and somewhere between that, I also started contributing a lot on WordPress. So in third year, we started a student freelance platform where companies can come post their jobs, and college students will start picking it up and work on it, and then companies will pay them. So these were like the small jobs which tech companies don't have tech bandwidth to do. Otherwise, it's a marketing job which none of the core techies want to take, because it's not cool. So they will put it there, students will do it, and then they will get paid. What also will happen is students will be ranked based on how well they did it, how well was the communication in the entire process and all of it. So it also started making a leaderboard through which companies used to hire. So Flipkart hired a bunch of guys from us back in 2011, 2012, when they were still very young. And then a few more major, the big names which are now, they used to put jobs there and also hire. So that's what I did in first and second, third and final year of the college. Then I moved out from there and started doing jobs.
That's so important, like you just mentioned, you just did, to give college students real experience in the world. In the sense they're able to experience what having a real job is or doing a real project. Instead of just, obviously education is very important and being a college is important, but you gave them that exposure that a lot of times they wouldn't get of actually working and doing a real job or working on a real project from a company, which is a
correct. So if you look at how the curriculums are designed, they are still very and they are still 10 years behind what industry is doing in
Right.
terms of the real software. And apart from that, students what also lack when not doing the real projects is how do the entire deployments happen? How does this code actually see the light of the day? And what are the challenges which start happening when people across the globe start using your product, or if there are different variants in which your system is being used. Let's say if I design a website today and if I run it on my machine, then all is good because that's the screen I built it for. But the moment you start putting it in front of 100,000 people, you see what's happening on low bandwidth networks, what's happening on mobile, what's happening on a cheap UC browser, I mean cheap mobile phones UC browsers, and what's happening on a big 30-inch monitor. And then you have to suddenly optimize for all of this. Academia is great, but it takes away this experience where
Right.
you have to constantly update your product. And that's what we were trying to give students, and figure out the right guys who are ready, industry ready, right then just out of the college, and help the companies hire them.
Right. So this first venture you started, from my understanding, was called Stock Ninja.
Correct. Yeah.
So when you left college, what happened? Did you shut it down, or just it continued itself?
Yeah. So what we figured out in that entire process was there was a constant challenge. While the company pipeline was easier to be built, I mean, once companies got hooked to it, they were constantly floating the projects. But the problem which we faced was the student life cycle was really small.
Mm-hmm.
First year and second year students do not have much experience of doing these projects to the level of quality which established companies will expect, like what I will expect today, even if it's a not so important piece of code, but if it's going in front of my customers, I still expect to be a bit mature. So somewhere around third year is when the students start getting hang of writing quality code, which can be then deployed as it is. But by the final year, once they have a job in hand, I mean, their inclination to work suddenly drastically goes down, and then they get into the mode of this is the final year and I better enjoy it because although this life is never going to come again, and this is the best year of my life comes. And so there was a constant problem to get the quality students into the system. And at some point we decided it's not worth it. So we had to shut it down, but I still believe that someone has to solve this problem. Someone has to bring additional tech bandwidth to companies, and at the same time provide a real industry experience to students.
Right. I understand. How did you get on? Where's entrepreneurship in your DNA from the beginning? So being a freelancer from 13 years old, coming to college, and then starting your own outsourcing technology tech. Where do you think the entrepreneurship DNA comes from in you?
I think it was partly fueled by my constant desire that I wanted to fund my own education, and I didn't want to be I didn't want my parents to pay. And the other reason for it was whenever my parents were paying, they were giving me, a fixed set of money. And I wanted to buy all the latest gadgets. I remember, I bought Android at some 1.8 or something, I think 1.8 or 1.6 or something. And the money from parents was not enough to do that. Do the kind of toys I wanted. So what to do? So let's start figuring out how do you do it. One thing led to the freelancing started. And from freelancing, I realized that if you want to do something bigger, if you want to make a bigger impact, then of course you have to go ahead and build a business. And that's some 2011, 2012 was the time when entrepreneurship had started picking up in India. The 2008 had passed and a lot of companies were getting funded. I remember starting to use Flipkart a lot. And similarly, Dhruva, Capillary were growing. And there were a lot of news media like Nextbit, what is it's called now, but Your Story plugged in, and they had started putting out more and more stories about entrepreneurship. Along with that, at the same time, I was really fascinated by Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. All of this that led to that. Yeah, let's start something and see how it goes. I don't have much to lose anyway.
Right. That's definitely the attitude. You have nothing to lose. What's the worst? The worst is it fails and you get an incredible education. And the best is that you have a success and you're successful.
Correct. At the worst, I'll go and take a job. That's what I ended up doing. But in the process, it gave me a lot of connects. It gave us a lot of experience on how to build the products and how to do all aspects of it, from customer support to finance to marketing and all of it. And I'll say that was an incredible experience for a college student.
Correct. So let's continue on and go to your second company. So Stock Ninja, I guess, ended up shutting itself down. And you go on to work for a few companies, and then you go on to start your second company, which is your third, which is your company right now, but originally you started much earlier as Verloop.
Right. So, I mean, before we move to how we started Verloop, in between there was a low period, I think, which we should talk about, because a lot of people uh, get into the lows and then they don't see how to move out of it. And uh, media doesn't, media doesn't publicize a lot of lows, which I think should come out. And I guess that's how you started as well with this entire video blogs. So, once I moved out from startup, I mean, in college, I decided to join TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. It's a services company, and partly because that was the only job offer in hand, because I was trying to be an asshole before that and saying I have my own company, I don't need a job. So uh, it's a it's a great company. I learned a lot of processes around it, but I found myself to be a misfit because I had gotten used to the fast-paced life of trying to act quickly, break things, and suddenly I was in a system which was very process-driven, and I got clinically depressed, and that phase continued for a good almost a year, and I ended up consulting doctors, and thankfully I was able to bounce back from there, and then I came to Bangalore and I started working with different startups and did some great work with them. But that entire process where, you don't know how to move out of it, but you find yourself not to be a fit. You know there is something wrong and you want to fix it, but you don't know how to do it, and you kind of feel helpless and trapped into the system. I think a lot of us go through it. Even now at the startup, at many a times, I don't know what the right solution is, and there's a lot of things at stake. You personally feel responsible for all the 15, 20 people who have chose to spend the best years of their life with you. So it still comes, but I think that entire incident of a year and how I was able to come out of it gave me a lot of confidence. And the people who are in the similar trenches of life, I think the only message I'll have for them is just hang on, believe that there is a positive hope out there, and just work towards it, and you'll be able to go across it. So now coming to
Wait, I'm gonna stop you there because I have so many questions. That's
sure.
such a powerful. But I think one of the things is that I always say, um, in the Bible, there's no commandment that God said be an asshole. No, God said be kind, be nice. So humility is such an important factor, such an important thing, and I will talk about this later on. But having humility, knowing your weaknesses and knowing your strengths, obviously, but knowing where your place is such an important thing. As humans, we have a double-edged sword. We think we're better than we actually are, and then we think we're worse than we actually are. It works both ways. But having said that, and you having overcome it and grown to learn who you are and what you are from that period, is just absolutely fascinating. And I want to go a little bit further, if you don't mind, into that period, to that dark period, because everybody goes through it some way or another, and especially entrepreneurs, we all go through it. Right. We have the time, then we wake up one morning not knowing if we're able to pay our employees. We have another time we wake up and all of a sudden we think our company's going to shut down any day until some miracle happens. Everyone goes through it in their own way. What was the story? What was the story behind it? What caused it? And then we'll just, obviously we're not going to stay through that dark period, but then I want to know, like, what was the cause that made you get out of it?
Right. So I'll say, like I said, that I was used to really fast-paced working. Since it was a small company, small startup, Stock Ninja, and we didn't mind breaking things and fixing it quickly. That was the kind of environment I was used to. TCS, on the other hand, was a totally contrary environment. It was a 180-degree opposite to what I was used to. Where it was a very process-driven environment. Things will take their own course of time. There will be releases in the 3-month period, 6 months period. They're not necessarily bad. And over the time, I have learned to appreciate those processes because they bring in so much predictability. But as a just fresh out of college, I found myself to be a misfit, and suddenly I was like, this is not the life I want. I mean, why am I stuck in it? And then for certain reasons, financial and all, I was supposed to be there for next some time. I mean, almost 2 years was what I planned, and I kind of felt helpless and, like I said, trapped in a box. You don't belong here. I mean, you honestly believe you don't belong here, but there is no way that you can go out of it. I did try doing a bunch of freelance just to feel good, but I mean that didn't work out either. But yeah, at some point, I mean, just within a year, although original contract and bonds were for 2 years. At 1 year, I was like, screw it. I mean, I can't let the finance decide my mental health. And that's when I decided to say fuck off to bonds and just move on from wherever I was stuck. And a good learning for me at that point was, it's okay to not know what you want to do in your life, or it's okay to not know what you're going to do next in your life, but you have to be crystal clear on what you're not going to do. What are the things you're not going to do no matter what? Like at this moment, I know what things we are not going to do. We are not going to, what are the ethics, principles we are never going to break? What are the lines we will never cross? So it's okay not to know what I'll do in 6 months, but be 100% sure on what you will not do.
Right. Yeah. That's just as important, knowing what you're not going to do and what you don't do, as knowing what you're going to do and worrying about all that. That's just so important too. Wow.
Yeah.
I am absolutely floored. I am touched by that honest and candid experience they went through. And I don't want to go back into that part because I know we don't want to put you in a bad mood. We don't want to put you there. But
no, I'm perfectly okay. I mean, now I've learned how to live with it, so that was a good learning.
So then, let me ask you now, when you go through a hard period now in the startup journey, because that's just the way life is. We go through hard times a lot. Life was not meant to be beautiful and perfect. Otherwise, there'd be no joy and fun in life. Life is about overcoming those challenges and those hardships. So when you go through a challenge now, how do you overcome it? And what did you tell yourself to overcome or to get out of that period?
Usually, the problems now are a lot more predictable for us. I mean, because we budget for all the problems around. I mean, when I say budget, not essentially financial budgets, but everything around it, how we are going to do it now. And I mean, we have been over the time being able to reduce a lot of unknowns and bring predictability into the system. But yeah, I mean, there are unknowns which keep happening. There are lows which keep coming. And what we have to see is there is a long-term 10-year, 20-year vision which we have. There is a mission we are driven by. And what we can do at this point of time to keep moving forward in that direction, rather than locking myself in a room and saying that I'm not good at this. This is not, I mean, to be honest, we all go through imposter syndrome. We all believe, I mean, at least I, at many a times I'll believe that, I mean, this is not what I'm capable of, and someday people will figure out and all of that. But you have to let go of those feelings and then look at the long-term things which are driving you, which have been driving us as a company for last 3 years, and look at those long-term goals, figure out what tiny steps I can take today to keep moving there. There are a lot of unknowns and uncertainties, but I still know that at a far distance, there is a guiding light where we want to keep moving forward. So as long as we keep making progress, it's okay. Some days we might sprint, other days we might not be able to do so much. We might be really at a snail pace, but as long as we are moving, it's okay. So that's the kind of methodology I use, and I also ask team to follow through that. As long as we are moving, everything is okay. The moment we get stagnant, that's when things start going horribly wrong.
Right. So as long as you're doing action and moving forward, that's the most important thing. There's a great saying. It says, think good will be good. Just the work of thinking positive, things will start becoming more positive. All that.
That's correct. I agree with it.
Let's go back to, so you started your second company. We'll skip Verloop for now. A company called Go Deliver.
Yeah.
Go Deliver was, I'm assuming, your first success story, which ended up getting acquired. So
that's correct.
Now, when you saw that company, did that give you more conviction? Like, you said sometimes we all suffer from imposter syndrome. But over here is somewhere where you went through that process of building something and scaling it and eventually selling it.
Yeah, so Go Deliver was a fun journey, and also because it was one of the journey. I mean, it was a very few journeys in my life in which we only saw the highs. We kept growing, got acquired. I mean, because the period was really small. I mean, from start to getting acquired, it was just 5 months or so. But one of the odds in that entire process was I was funding it from my personal bank account. So, I mean, good that it got acquired. Otherwise, I mean, at some point we would have ran out of money either. But I don't think, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but I don't think that helps to take away imposter syndrome or anything at all. I mean, the stakes get bigger and the thoughts get bigger. But what it does give you is a confidence that I have done it before and I can do it again. What it also gives you a bit of credibility out there, and people start trusting you. So you are able to sell your vision to a lot more people, and they believe that since you have been able to do it at one time, you definitely have some substance in whatever you are talking, and it gets easier to build a team and do the next one out. So we were acquired at by Growth Story. Growth Story, the parent company for some of the biggest companies in India, like Big Basket, Fresh Menu, Portia Medical, and all of them. So we were acquired there to run technology arm for a similar company in the similar space, funded by Growth Story, called Magic Tiger. Mm-hmm. And so we joined Magic Tiger team to run the tech, build the tech around it, and that's the acquisition story.
Wow. So having experienced the ultimate low, if you're Stock Ninja, then experiencing the ultimate high from Go Deliver, what are the lessons that you took with you to Verloop?
Lesson for Verloop, I think from that entire low high was, it's all a part of noise. I mean, you have to cut through lows as well as you have to cut through the highs, and you have to go through a consistent path. And end of the day, the only thing that matters is your customer. As long as your customer is happy, things around it, all the highs and the lows or whatever emotional challenges or financial challenges you're facing will get solved sooner or later. So once we started Verloop, the core idea was that we are going to make sure NPS is one of the biggest things we track. We'll go out of the way, we'll do everything possible and under our control to make the customer experience happy, to make his journey as delightful as possible. And that's why when we started for the first year, we only worked with 4 customers. One entire year, we were working with 4 customers, understanding their needs, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. We had a lot of thoughts on this probably will be helpful for the customers, but we figured out, no, this doesn't matter at all. And based on those 4 customers, once we knew that we are solving core problems, like for one of the customers, we automate almost 92% of the conversations. For other, we drive 30% of their total transactions for one of the products. Once we were able to become an indispensable part of their processes is when we decided that it's a time to expand our horizons and take in more customers. Then we took the next bunch of 1,000 customers, and then slowly now we have reached a stage where more than those sign up every month on Verloop.
Wow. I love that. So you did the processing instead of growing 100%, that 100%, you took it, obviously you try to scale the product to find out the real product market fit in the beginning with this limited amount of customers and then growing from there.
Correct. So what those 4 customers gave us, I mean, we strategically choose those 4 customers in 4 different markets. So to figure out where can we draw the maximum impact. I mean, out of 4, only 2 worked. The rest 2, we figured out the problems, even though we think exist, they don't exist at all. But these 2, which worked really well, gave us immense learnings in terms of what we can do. And given this is a machine learning, this is a core tech product we are building for non-tech audience. Right. Because our audience are head of supports and head of marketing who usually do not have a very long stint with programming. So how do you dumb it down? I mean, as a machine learning product, how do you make it more intuitive? How do you make them understand that when I ask your name, it's not just that you will say Gaurav. There are 4 ways in which you can say your name. Like you can say, my name is Gaurav, in which name is only Gaurav, rest of all is fluff. You can say fuck off, which essentially is a negation. Right. Or you can say, what's the weather in New York, which doesn't relate at all to your company. or you can say what's your pricing, in which you have to answer about the pricing and then go back and say, by the way, what was your deal? So we had all these learnings, and then from these learnings we decided to grow. And I mean, once we decided to grow, what happened was we already knew the market really well. The discovery problem was solved. So we were able to directly pitch to the customers, knew what their needs are, and then directly go and close. Mm-hmm. So that 1 year of time spent with the customers, understanding the challenges in the next year gave us a great acceleration, because there was no discovery left. I mean, there were almost, of course, parts of discovery pending, but we were not taken by surprise at any point of time, and we knew what the needs are, what exactly needs to be done to delight these guys, and we just kept copy pasting that.
Wow, that's great. And it's it's just a phenomenal lesson for any entrepreneur listening of how to build. So let me ask you like this then. I'm sure you get approached a lot from other entrepreneurs because of everything that you've been through and the experience you've been through and the lessons that you've learned. I'm sure you get approached a lot from people for advice or just to pick your knowledge. So what is like your go-to message right now that you currently tell either a new entrepreneur or someone that's aspiring entrepreneur? What do you tell them? What's your go-to message you tell them when they're about to start off?
So my message has been, like I said, that customers are the kings. And my message has been that revenue is the cheapest kind of funding you can get. And when someone trusts you with the money, that essentially means you have vetted your product, you are making a real impact in their business, and they're finding it worthwhile enough. They are spending time learning it. I mean, money being secondary, most of the bigger businesses or most of the businesses are time crunched. If you are giving you their time, if they're investing their time, then they have already found you useful. Right. So before you start chasing media or funding, go ahead, find a bunch of customers who praise you, who are willing to connect you to the next set of people. Get started with revenue channels, and then slowly scale from there. Don't fantasize about raising $1 million or $10 million on day zero, because you can't throw money at the problems. I mean, you have to put innovation and experience at them. Money cannot solve most of your problems. I mean, it just gives you a longer runway to solve them. But yeah, most of my experience has been building enterprise products and SaaS. So, I mean, I'm not sure if this is helpful for B2C guys.
Well, any lesson, I believe could be implemented from one place to another place in some way or another. So there's not even a question. The lessons over there is something that someone else can implement too. You gave a talk at Growth Story from TechSparks. You gave a talk over there, and you highlighted over there 25 SaaS mistakes to avoid as a first-time founder. And those things over there are just we don't have time to go through all of them, but I'm just going to skip through like a few of them that I find really relevant. The first one is that you write over there is losing focus. It's very easy. A startup, I always say, it's very easy to lose focus. You're building a startup for 18 months, 22 months, and then you have your startup next door to you that's also building the same startup in a similar space, but the same time space, but they're getting all the money, all the media, and you're wondering, am I doing something wrong or not? And then what happens? You start making that slight pivot there, and you start losing focus. So that is a message. Like, that's incredible. Like, having that strong focus, that relentless pursuit of your goal, to continue going forward in that part, and not to get all excited or get disturbed or distracted by the other noise from other people. That's just a phenomenal thing over there. You have so many things, obsessing over competitors. And I find that one of the most incredible things. I want you to elaborate on that, if you don't mind. Could I?
The talk I gave were actually the mistakes we did. So, I mean, that's not in Hindi we call it gyan. So it was not a gyan, but gyan is actually the random fluff you blabber, just because it's cool. So, I mean, that's the gyan meaning in this context. But so it was not a gyan, it was actually from our own mistakes. So when we started, if you look at our closest competitors, we compete with Drift and Intercom. And the first thing we started doing was the GTM was not very clear. I mean, once we started to go out to all the customers in the second year of life, I mean, we decided to hit every customer out there, and I mean, who matched the profile of first two businesses. And we started chasing all of them. At the same time, we started matching what Intercom was building, what Drift was building. And over the period of time, we realized that those things don't matter to our customers. And we went back to basics of the first 12 years, 12 months, where, I mean, we knew what makes a dollar move in the customer's life. I mean, when we solve these problems, everything around it might be good for Drift because the kind of target audience they have, but it's very different from what we are doing. So we ended up spending 3-4 months. I mean, we wasted about 3 months, I'll say, building a bunch of features which are not worth for us. So that's how I learned that it doesn't matter. And that's why I keep repeating, just go back to your customers. In the entire crux, I mean, if you want to narrow down my entire 25 slides to one, it will be go talk to your customers and do what is right for them.
Wow. That's incredible. So tell me, who are some of the people that have made a difference in your life and that you look up to?
A lot of people have made difference at different points of my life. I have always been fascinated by the journey of Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, like huge fans. Elon has been into a bunch of controversies right now, but that doesn't undermine whatever he has achieved at different businesses he has built so far. And a huge fan, along with that, Benjamin Franklin. I love whatever he has done and the books and everything around it. Then in current world, I keep interacting with good entrepreneurs. So Ganesh, the founder of Growth Story, is like a mentor to me. He taught me the nitty-gritties of enterprise sales. Otherwise, I mean, it was very hard for me to get into enterprise sales because, I mean, the customer life cycle is totally different. The way you sell is very different. And the kind of patience you need, I usually run out of patience very often. So he taught me how to do the price negotiations. How do you go through the entire 12-month deal cycles and things around it. Then I also interact with a lot of other friends in startup ecosystem. Pallav Nadhani from Fusion Charts. He's a friend and a good mentor for me. I'll consider him to be a good mentor. So a lot of the guys in the current ecosystem help me, and I'm incredibly thankful for all the patience and learnings they have given me. And yeah, those are the guys I keep going back to, and my team, of course, who have been incredibly helpful in the entire journey.
Wow. And what are some of the books you recommend to other people to read?
0 to 1 is a good book. Mm-hmm. I really like that. The Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark is amazingly good book on, especially if you don't know how to do the sales, if you have never built a sales machine before. That's a really good book. Apart from that, again, I mean, like I said, in the current branches of my learning, building, marketing, and sales is my priority. So I've been reading a lot around that. So Predictable Revenue, again, is an amazing book to read. Once I zoom out of all of this, I love It's Not About Bike by Lance Armstrong. Mm-hmm. That's one of the books I will highly recommend to anyone who is in the lows of their life and want to see how it has got it has got into a bit of gray zone now after the doping scandal, but it's an amazing book and it's one of my all-time favorite.
Wow. Now, I want to go back to that point. You said this book about Lance Armstrong and, you know, the getting out of a low point. You know, we all go through it, and it's totally okay. You know, and mental health right now is becoming a much of a bigger thing. And people are starting to focus on it. And it's such an important thing to exercise, to meditate, and to take care of yourself in order that, and we have to know that these lows will come, and we just have to get the strength in order to come out of it. And like you've touched upon it so many times throughout this thing, and it's just so incredible to see you now where you are, you know, and the man that you have become and the journey that is to come, and to see where you're going to end up. Because there's no doubt in my mind that one day we're going to have a book by Gaurav, you know, that's going to be up there on the shelf together with 0 to 1 and the book about Elon Musk and Steve Jobs' book and the hard things about hard things. We'll have your book there too. You know, not even a question. Wow. You have so much. And the humility that you have is incredible. So Gaurav, I want to thank you so much for agreeing. And I know this is an anomaly. You know, usually don't go do public interviews. You don't do interviews in general. You know, you're all about the relentless pursuit of focusing on that customer. So I want to thank you so much for agreeing to come share your story and your journey. And I'm sure plenty of people are going to take out a lot of lessons that you shared today. and are going to either be able to implement them in their startup or in their own personal life. So thank you so much for today.
Thanks a lot for this interview, and I hope I mean this makes a change in someone's life. And if anyone needs help, I'm always around. They can reach out to me on mail. I'm at g@verloop.io, so they can drop me a mail at any point of time. But yeah, thanks a lot again for having me here. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
Sure, and I'm just going to touch on one point that you just mentioned now, that it's not about affecting the whole entire world when we want to make change or affect one person. It's about affecting one person, and that one person affects another person, and that chain of reaction starts to happen. So even it's not about affecting even that one person in Indonesia or someone in China that's going to watch this and gets affected, then we've accomplished our goal.
Exactly.
Yeah. So have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks again.